Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, Brittany, you're killing me. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this amazing event. Want to start off by I can't thank everybody. So I want to thank Commissioner Liberty, Daniel Troop, and everybody from the National Prison Debate League for making this happen. The folks from Harvard for coming all this way and taking part in this. This is truly continuation of groundbreaking events that are happening within Maine Department of Corrections, National Prison Debate League, but also now spreading because of the work that we've been able to do here in Maine, spreading to multiple states, and now even going abroad to Finland. So we just started. Brittany, the brains behind the operation, who's sitting in front of me, uh, really did a lot of work setting up everything in Finland. So we are now international. I'll introduce myself. I'm Sean Libby. I'm currently incarcerated at the Maine State Prison. Currently a board member of the advisory board for the National Prison Debate League, and have two-time champion for the National Prison Debate League. Undefeated. So, and my first ever debate, I started as an alternate. I was just a guy who was there to help do some research. One of the guys backed out, and it kind of fell on me, kind of last minute to step in, and the opportunity was amazing, and to be able to work with fellow residents and debate a school. The first school we debated was MIT, and again, it's about how groundbreaking this is. It might not seem like it for a lot of people, but those of us who are incarcerated know that it's not easy to get people from different facilities working together, different genders in different facilities working together. Our first debate was a mixture of men and women from different facilities all around the state, not just working together over Zoom, but our actual debate. We got together in one facility, in one room, to come together to debate and put a whooping on MIT. So, and that is kind of, the tone that we're setting with these things, and the tone I want to set with this is how groundbreaking this is. And to think of the opportunities that this is opening up, goes back to Commissioner Liberty and what he's doing for the Maine Department of Corrections, opening these opportunities, simple that we can sit on Zooms in our rooms in various facilities, and work together as a team, come together as a team to put a whooping on colleges across the country is amazing. But it's more than that. It's these opportunities. It's coming together and working as a team, working as a group. It's Daniel and I were just talking about this, like the word humanizing can't be used enough. It's something that you forget about the prison. You forget about, all the stuff that goes with it when you're just coming together for a common goal of putting a whooping on college across the country. Did I say I was undefeated? All right. I have a bet with somebody how many times I can say two-time champ and undefeated. But it's about, think about what we're doing today. These gentlemen are residents of Maine State Prison, and talking about breaking down barriers is what we've been doing with this whole thing, with National Prison Debate League, coming together with universities like Harvard and MIT and Wake Forest and so many others. Now we're going to be in Finland. It's all about breaking down barriers. But think about what we're doing today. We're breaking down a barrier we have a group of residents with a staff person who is working with a group of residents as a teammate, not as a staff person and residents, not as somebody in a hierarchical structure over somebody else. He's just a teammate. He's working together with a group of guys on a common goal of putting a whooping on a college. So it's just those types of things. I've been incarcerated for 26 years, since I was 18 years old. I've seen so many iterations of corrections since I've been in. And what I've seen and the opportunities I've had over the last bunch of years with the leadership of Commissioner Liberty started with him as our warden at the Maine State Prison. Just looking at us in a different light, looking at corrections in a different light, breaking down those barriers of what could and couldn't happen. I'm in grad school right now, studying youth development, Michigan State University. I would have never thought that was possible. There's so many people doing so many amazing things. That's one thing I always say is, I could sit here and tell you all the great things I'm doing. I'm not the exception to the rule. I'm more the rule than most people in society know. There are so many people in so many facilities across this state and across the country that are capable of so many amazing things and are doing currently so many amazing things. And when we're given these opportunities and these barriers start coming down, and we start being viewed as more human than anything, and our accomplishments and what our capabilities are viewed as anybody else's, it's not an overstatement to say it's life-changing. It really is. These opportunities that we're getting, it's life-changing. And to be sitting in a room with folks from Harvard, their willingness to come here and work with us, work with the National Prison Debate League, these partnerships that we're building is really what it comes down to, is trying to open up these opportunities, building these partnerships, showing what's really possible, what education can do for anybody, but especially in a correctional setting, showing the capacity for individuals who have done things that they're not proud of, but they're able to move forward and show who they really are when they're given these kind of opportunities. That's what it really comes down to. And there are representatives from the women's debate team here who will put a whooping on a university later, early next month. We have representatives from the men's team here from MCC who did a hell of a job recently in a debate. And to see everybody coming together and to see so many staff and outside guests and people coming here today and people watching this from wherever is truly remarkable. And it's coming from a place of building something bigger and better that's more productive than what anybody thought corrections should be. And I just hope everybody knows what the barriers that are coming down, the opportunities that people are getting, that not just that they're getting these opportunities, that they're taking advantage of these opportunities. I'm a two-time defending national champion debater, undefeated. All right, just saying. So I'm thankful for my opportunity to work with the National Prison Debate League. I'm thankful for Commissioner Liberty, for folks like Phil Pataco, who really puts in a lot of time and effort. Kate Getz, Jennifer Jenkins, these folks who are putting in on the ground in the facilities, doing the work that really opens up these opportunities. Erica Grover here at MCC has done an amazing job, and it can't be overstated when administration, staff, residents can come together and work together, the amount of things that are possible. And I just want to thank everybody for coming, and two-time. Just saying. Now I want to hand it over to a gentleman I was able to meet earlier today, who in a very short amount of time, you ever meet someone who you're just like, I like this guy, like this guy, he's a good dude and genuine person just from the start. And he's going to be our moderator today. So I want to welcome up to the podium, Mr. Dave Myland.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely appreciate the space today. Definitely appreciate the fact that I'm able to moderate. And I would be remiss if I didn't open up with just a few quick marks on like what it is that we have here today, right? I know he just said it, but I want to highlight it. He comes from Maine. He's subjective to the Maine prison system. So his perspective and his lens that he looks through is based on his experience, right? And he just said that he started somewhere and he elevated to another position within a correctional setting. Think about that. That's huge. It really is. I grew up in the Massachusetts prison system. The perspective that he has took me a long time to get. It wasn't supported by commissioners and staff members. It wasn't supported by fellow inmates, convicts. I'll use the term responsible parties, right? I come from a restorative justice lens. So everything I see is kind of trying to bridge gaps. It's trying to bring people together because I understand the us versus them doesn't work. It doesn't do nothing for the community, and it doesn't do nothing for the person that is responsible for obviously the madness that we commit onto our communities. So what I'm seeing here today, the acceptance, the welcoming, everything, it's big. And I just really feel like I have to acknowledge that. I have to validate that. And I got to give credit to where it's due. So hats off to the commissioner and his staff. Definitely want to give him a round of applause. And honestly, like, you know, I just want to say something about this, the NPDL, National Prison Debate League, right? Danny's one of my best friends. We spent years, decades walking the yard talking about this. We get out around the same time. This guy says, yeah, about to start this nonprofit. Really? All those conversations actually came to fruition. And this is like the product of those conversations. So I would also be super remiss if we didn't give a round of applause to our great director over here, Mr. Daniel Troop. Then there's a whole host of other team members. I definitely want to give them a round of applause, but I don't want to be here all day. So we'll just not name them. We'll just give them their kudos. Appreciate that. So last thing is a little bit about me. I'm 22 years incarcerated, system impacted, felony murder. I'm a second-degree lifer on parole in Massachusetts for the rest of my life. Maine lets me in the prison. Massachusetts has a hard time. I've committed to my life to restorative justice. I've committed my life to educational things such as the NPDL. I'm a volunteer for this program. I'm a volunteer for many programs that anything that I see is good and is uplifting and can empower people and help people, I'm gonna wrap my head around it if I can find the time to do it. So when Danny asked me to be a part of this, it was no questions asked. His character speaks for itself. I don't care what anybody says about him, right? As for me, education set me free. It really did. Bachelor's degree from Boston University. I was a drug dealer. I was a drug dealer who got caught up in a crime with a group of friends of ours killed somebody. Literally, there's no going back from that. There really isn't. So I sat for about a decade in shame. And then literally, like, people like Danny was on my back. You should sign up for this college program. What do I need college for? I'm doing life in prison. I may never get out. But the tenaciousness of him and a few other people, I ended up with my bachelor's degree. Amen to that, right? But the reason I say that is because honestly, this is a judgment. I don't think everybody in this room understands how powerful education is. Like, it's literally kudos to the top. It can transform your life. It can transcend you from your position, and it can actually open up a lot of doors and acceptance. So with that said, just give you guys all a round of applause for everybody that's in the room that's a part of this. And we're going to move right along, as we always do. So once again, welcome. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely appreciate you having you guys here. Honored guests, all of the administration, the staff. Definitely appreciate having all of you here. And today, the National Prison Debate League is going nuclear. Nuclear. Literally, this is going to be a big bang. So we hope that you're all prepared to witness an unforgettable display of both intellectual ability and social diplomacy, as our teams from Harvard University and from Maine State Prison, the Convictionists, convene for a policy debate, which is usually the toughest debates to do. So kudos, hats off to you guys. And I'll just put it out there. Resolved. The United States should eliminate land-based ICBMs from its nuclear force. Maine State Prison. You guys can tell where I did this a lot, huh? So Maine State Prison will argue on the affirmative, supporting this resolution, while Harvard argues in the negative position, refuting the affirmative's case. Each debater will be judged upon the following criteria. 1 would be analysis. 2 would be reasoning. 3 would be most important evidence. Organization, refutation, and delivery, style points, right? The very distinguished 4 judges that we have for today's debate are first, our chief judge, Danielle O'Gorman, the director of debate at the United States Naval Academy. Give her a round of applause. Next up, we have judge number 2. We have Michael Jonas, former director of debate at Sanford University and former president of American Forensic Association. Can we give him a round of applause, please? And for our final judge, we have Ed Panetta, former director of debate at the University of Georgia. Can we please give him a warm round of applause? All right, and as today's moderator, everybody, I will introduce the debaters individually, and I will adhere to their specific time limits. A digital timer in front of you, so you guys can see obviously where you're at. You will be able to see that. A digital timer will be displayed on the screens, and the speakers' microphones will be muted if they are to exceed their time limits. Very important. So you'll be up here talking. Nobody's going to be able to understand what you're saying. At the conclusion of the debate, our judges will tally up each team's cumulative point totals to determine the winner of today's contest. With all that said, now it is time to expand our minds with this great debate. So, representing Maine State Prison's The Convictionists, we have Ryan Moorside giving a 7 to 9 minute presentation. Ryan hails from Bangor, Maine. He is a sophomore currently for the University of Maine, Augusta, where he is studying nursing. Let's give him a warm round of applause and welcome him to the lecture.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and supporting us. It means a lot. From Maine State Prison Debate Team, thank you. Good afternoon, esteemed judges, my worthy opponents. Thank you for your attention and consideration. My name is Ryan Moorside, and I'll be answering yes to the affirmative. Should the United States abolish our land-based nuclear weapons? As the late Robert Oppenheimer once said, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." As a nation, we, the United States, have unlocked a Pandora's box of nuclear weapons. And it is our responsibility to mitigate the potential harm caused by our past actions. The first step towards nuclear reduction should be taken, starting with our aging and outdated Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile systems. And these systems, which have the potential to cause catastrophic loss of life on a global scale, are stored in over 400 separate underground silos across the heartland of our great nation. The argument that these locations have been strategically chosen to act as a nuclear sponge, absorbing potential nuclear attacks from our adversaries, is not without its flaws. While it may seem like a clever strategy,
to draw our adversaries' missiles and absorb these attacks, it is not a foolproof method. The states that host these nuclear silos are essentially being sacrificed for this purpose. And this sacrifice would include many national treasures, such as Yellowstone National Park, Mount Rushmore, and many tribal lands. If an event of a nuclear attack, the death toll could exceed 10 million casualties. That's a half the population of New York State. Furthermore, the nuclear waste generated by these silos is a significant environmental concern. Nuclear waste lasts for tens of thousands of years, and the current system of nuclear waste disposal is inadequate. The Atomic Energy Act and its progeny, the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, exempt nuclear waste from environmental laws, which is the essential reason why we are stuck where we are. If we were to be attacked, the initial cost would fall on our generation. However, the long-term consequences would be borne by our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Is this a price worth paying? The question of eliminating these nuclear weapons, which were initially developed as a deterrent against the Soviet Union during the Cold War, is a pressing one. The weapons are still being used against that same adversary, Russia, and are not available for use in any other conflicts in the Middle East or the Pacific due to the risk of invading Russian airspace. If one of these weapons ever launched, Russia would perceive that as a direct attack against them and would counter-launch in defense, which would cause World War III. Studies in 2021 by the Nuclear Information Project Federation of American Scientists recorded that 60% of Americans support eliminating these ICBMs. And again, in 2021, the senior research fellow at Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft found that 60% of Americans favored foregoing the development of new nuclear ICBMs and eliminating the existing systems that are in place. The data is heavily skewed in favor of reducing our nuclear footprint, with a significant majority of Americans in favor of downsizing our nuclear arsenal. In another study conducted by the Research Associate of Nuclear Information Project of the Federation of American Scientists revealed that only 5% of Americans believe that nuclear modernization enhances their safety. With most of the American population in favor of eliminating our land-based nuclear weapons and far less in favor of sustaining them, we should begin the process of reduction. The Biden administration has a huge opportunity to phase out our ICBMs from our nuclear triad, and by doing so could gain confidence from our adversaries, such as Russia and China. By eliminating these ICBMs, tensions would ease, and this could help rebuild Russian-U.S. relations. And this could be achieved within the framework of arms control negotiations, potentially leading to concessions from other nuclear adversaries, contributing to the advancement of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. One approach could be to propose a bilateral agreement or a multilateral treaty that would commit both countries to eliminate their nuclear silos. Let us not forget the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons enacted in July 7th, 2017, and as of yet, no countries have signed this treaty. Instead, currently, Russia is modernizing its nuclear forces, technically violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and these forces will include many new bombers and submarines, such as the Tu-95 Bear bombers, which are comparable to our B-52s, and the Akula-class submarines, which are very similar to our Ohio-class submarines. The United States is in the process of modernizing its nuclear forces, also technically violating the NPT. However, both the United States and Russia are pointing fingers at each other for the lack of progress in arms control negotiations. The track record has not been particularly positive, and it is time for a change. We must be the ones to take the first significant step towards progress and serve as leaders in nuclear reduction, not just nuclear power. These dangers are very real, and for many Americans, those dangers are right in their backyards. These nuclear weapons are not without their vulnerabilities. They are highly susceptible to human error, system glitches, and cyber threats. And there have been instances where such incidences have nearly occurred. On September 26, 1983, Russia's early detection systems detected 5 incoming U.S. missiles, which was caused from high altitude clouds that falsely triggered Russia's detection systems. And this was caused when the sun, satellite, and American silos aligned in just a way that it caused those reflections. Had these missile silos never existed, this incident would have never occurred. And the risk associated with these weapons are not limited to our adversaries. The likelihood of our very own weapons accidentally detonating is a very real possibility. And in fact, it's already happened. On September 19th, 1980, a tragic incident occurred at Missile Complex Site 374-7, where a U.S. airman was killed and an intercontinental ballistic missile loaded with a 9-megaton nuclear warhead exploded. And that warhead was launched over 100 feet. And fortunately, that did not detonate. And this incident was caused when Airman David D. Powell dropped a 3-foot ratchet wrench weighing 25 pounds, 80 feet down a silo, causing damage to the fuel tank after bouncing off a thrust mount. And on August 5th, 2013, the 341st Missile Wing at Malmstrom Base in Montana failed an inspection for hostile takeover. These new weapons do not make us safer and are a direct threat to every U.S. citizen's safety, security, and future. And the United States plans to upgrade the Minuteman systems, and this will have an initial cost of $100 to $400 billion. That's about $1,200 per person, with a 30-year lifespan with a total cost of $2 trillion. That's about $6,200 per person. The allocation of these resources could be better directed towards enhancing and strengthening our other 2 legs of our defense systems, which offer more versatility and are not merely passive targets awaiting an incoming attack. It could turn 5 or more states into a radioactive wasteland. While our land-based nuclear weapons have served their purpose well, it is time to acknowledge their end. It is high time we eliminated all land-based nuclear weapons from our stockpile and relegate these relics to our historical archives where they belong. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So, with that said, coming up to provide a cross-examination for the negative teams would be Rishi Mukherjee, senior from Boston, majoring in accounting. Timers, he has 1 to 3 minutes. Rishi.
Okay, I'll save thank yous for my other speech, but we can just get started with the cross-examination. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So my first question is about our adversaries. Do you believe adversaries like China and Russia think that we will use an ICBM now?
No, I don't.
Okay, so your argument that you presented in the case relies on escalation happening. If they think that we will not use an ICBM now, then why will tensions escalate to nuclear war?
Well, just having the nuclear weapons in place, these silos, create for a destabilized relationship.
Well, the destabilization assumes credibility of nuclear use. If Russia and China think that we will not use nuclear weapons, then why would there be instability?
Well, I think there's been instability since their creation. Just their creation caused instability.
Okay. My next question regards sponge theory, which is essentially more nuclear weapons means it's easier to defend the homeland. So the United States has 455 ICBM bases across the United States, but only 5 total bases, including subs and Air Force bases. Do you think that 5 bases is sufficient to protect the United States homeland?
I think that is more than sufficient. How many submarines do we
5?
have?
Okay, we have less than 20 submarines.
Okay, and less than 20 submarines with how many nuclear weapons?
Okay, my question regards whether or not a launch on the United States homeland occurs.
Okay.
It's clearly easier to attack 5 targets than over 500 targets, correct?
Those targets aren't just 5 targets. Those are submarines that scatter and disappear, and we do not know where those are at any
Okay,
point
well,
in time.
we know the locations of the bases. They're in Georgia, Washington. The Air Force bases are in North Dakota, Louisiana, and Missouri.
Those submarines aren't at those bases.
Okay, well, they're refueled and loaded at those bases.
They
but
can be refueled.
I think we're going in
anywhere.
circles. My next question regards public Americans. Only 5% of Americans believe in modernization, as you said, but how are you going to sell this policy to the DoD? The DoD pours in lots of money, as you said, why would they be simply okay with eliminating an entire leg of the nuclear triad?
Well, I mean, if we eliminate one leg and bolster the other two more effective systems, I think anybody
Okay, so
could reason that.
your argument relies on spilling over to the other ones. My next question is about nuclear waste. You said that nuclear waste is a problem and not easy to eliminate. What do you do with all the waste from the ICBM?
Well, I think our disposal systems is the problem. What exactly is the waste?
So you said that nuclear waste occurs when you get rid of weapons and they also produce weapons. You're advocating for abolishing ICBMs. What happens to the nuclear waste?
The nuclear waste that's already in place.
Yeah, what happens to it?
Yeah, well, we put it in our current disposal systems that we do have.
where does that
The
go?
question is the new disposal of new nuclear waste. What are we going to do with that?
Okay, that's not an answer to my question. I'm asking you, where does the waste go? Does it pollute the groundwater?
Well,
Where
I
does it
believe
go?
we have 3 current disposal sites in the United States. It would go to those locations where it would stay like all other nuclear waste.
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And moving right along, presenting the negative team's first constructive argument. Timers, the speech is 7 to 9 minutes. We have Vikram Valami, freshman from the Bay Area, majoring in accounting. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Maine Prison debate team. It's an honor, and thank you to the audience. I'll get started. Our first argument will be a counterplan, a better alternative to the affirmative team's policy. We believe that the United States should A, establish, monitor, and utilize a nuclear crisis communication hotline with other nuclear nations. B, establish, fund, and utilize a multilateral nuclear risk reduction center, which includes flyover operations with other nuclear nations. And C, establish a program through its space exploration apparatus to dispose of nuclear waste in the sun. These policies prevent miscalculation. Even if hotlines don't work, they would spill over to effective crisis prevention mechanisms. That's Stephen E. Miller, director of the International Security Program at the Harvard Kennedy School, writing in 2021. Dangerous crises might be abated by clarity in communications and mutual understanding that dampens reciprocal fears that might spiral out of control. To supplement the hotline with institutions devoted to preventing nuclear war, creation of a joint crisis control center. This will create offices and staffs that communicate regularly, monitor development, shared information routinely, created connections that enabled instantaneous communication between experts whenever necessary. The hotline is a first step. There's simply no excuse for not proceeding to develop and deploy an improved hotline. These costs are virtually insignificant. Its utility in the event of a nuclear exchange incalculable. Our second argument is a disadvantage. Right now, U.S. nuclear guarantees in East Asia are preventing cascading nuclear proliferation. The plan's removal of ICBMs guarantees a cascading arms race in the region. That's Jeremy Rauch with the National Bureau of Asian Research writing in 2023. The Indo-Pacific is home to several nuclear threshold powers, an increasingly unpredictable regional security environment due to North Korea and China. The strategic implications of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As a result, U.S. allies expressed a desire to strengthen U.S. nuclear deterrence guarantees. In the absence of substantial reassurance by the U.S., threshold states may believe that acquiring nuclear weapons is a low-cost undertaking. South Korea advances several proposals to enhance deterrence, already possesses the ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as a robust civilian nuclear expertise and technology. Japan uniquely possesses an indigenous nuclear enrichment capability and the technological capacity to rapidly develop warheads. Taiwan does not enjoy the same extended deterrence guarantee. Taiwan could leverage technical expertise to develop nuclear weapons and strengthen deterrence. That is especially true for intercontinental ballistic missile elimination. It causes Japan and South Korea to proliferate. That's Dodge, a research scholar at the National Institute for Public Policy, writing in 2021. ICBMs are important to Allied security. Countries like Japan and South Korea rely on U.S. nuclear guarantees that have allowed allies to forego their own nuclear weapons, even though many have the technological know-how and access to nuclear materials. The U.S. relies exclusively on its strategic and nuclear capabilities for assurance. Requirements for extended deterrence are evolving, applying the need for a degree of flexibility. The ICBM provides such flexibility, and linking U.S. strategic forces with U.S. nuclear assurances has been U.S. policy for decades. It creates important synergies that contribute to deterrence. An adversary would have to spend hundreds of warheads in a direct attack, serves to frustrate any nuclear attack planning by bolstering deterrence. ICBMs enhance the credibility of U.S. security guarantees to allies, and the U.S. is more likely to come to the defense of others when risks to its own territory are minimized. Without ICBMs, a limited homeland attack will be well within the reach of other nuclear powers. Vulnerability results in substantial ambiguity. That loss of assurances causes overwhelming pressure for the U.S. to deploy tactical nuclear weapons to the peninsula. That causes arms races with China, Japan, and North Korea that could go nuclear and crashes the global arms control regime. That's Dr. Toby Dalton, a PhD in public policy from GMU, writing in 2021. Korean parties calling for the U.S. to deploy tactical nuclear weapons. They would repair perceived damage to extended deterrence. These views tend to be dismissed in Washington. Frustration regarding alliance consultations speak to U.S. credibility deficit. Calls reflect real anxieties. Plausible developments would force Washington to make difficult choices between alliance management and nonproliferation. To rebuild alliance capability and damage interest in redeployment. If Biden adjusts policy, it may face requests for countervailing forward deployment. Assurance gains will be outweighed by far-reaching risks. Tactical nuclear weapons could provoke a deepening arms race with China, whose consequences worsen conflict escalation. North Korea could respond by developing its own battlefield nukes, dramatically increasing the risk of use in even limited scenarios. Redeploying could stymie negotiations. Korean-Japanese disputes could deepen. Non-proliferation globally would be set back. Russia, China would use the deployment as a wedge issue to frustrate U.S. policy. The NPT would also provide a convenient excuse to eschew future arms control. Adversaries will then shift focus on making the affirmative team's impacts inevitable. That's Koslow writing in 2021. Eliminating ICBMs would pose additional problems, like increased investments adversaries would likely make in defeating the remaining two legs of the nuclear triad. U.S. allies would obtain their own nuclear weapons in the wake of a bizarre U.S. policy of unilateral restraint, when contrasted with Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang's doubling down on modernizing their land-based ICBMs. The most likely result will be a preemptive North Korean strike that sparks a nuclear war. That's Solosky writing in 2017, a non-resident senior fellow in Carnegie's Russia and Eurasia program. A U.S. decision to redeploy TNWs, the commander of U.S. forces in North Korea would want sole authority to deploy these weapons. Because of compressed time due to short distances, authority must be pre-delegated launch authority, especially because weapons will be highly vulnerable to a preemptive first strike. There will be strong incentives to use these weapons first or risk losing them. Thus, the introduction of U.S. TNWs in South Korea would increase the risk of a nuclear exchange. It is likely that North Korea would react by accelerating its own short-range weapons. This could trigger an arms race. Both sides launching an action-reaction cycle, producing greater instability. This disadvantage is much more likely to outweigh and result in a nuclear war than the affirmative team's plan. That's Matthew R. Costa writing in 2021. Given the abundance of ground and space sensors, the extensive training operators receive, and the prevalence of safeguards in the system, the chances of every kind of modern sensor and human operator all making the same type of error approaches the level of probability that we find Sasquatch. Critics will point to previous incidents, a far cry from the data needed to present today the option of launching ICBMs while under supposed attack. On average, less than 1% of the annual Department of Defense budget, ICBMs are the least costly leg of the nuclear triad. Our third argument in this speech is the deterrence disadvantage. Intercontinental ballistic missiles serve as warhead sinks. Any reduction would lower nuclear deterrence and make the U.S. vulnerable to enemy first strikes. That's Matthew Kroenig writing in 2018. The existence of an ICBM force raises the opening ante for a nuclear first strike. Adversary would need to target at least 455 sites on the U.S. mainland. To ensure destruction of a target would require the enemy to generate an offensive force package of approximately 900 nuclear warheads, not possible for two of America's three nuclear adversaries. An intentional enemy for nuclear first strike on the U.S. would be easier to plan and execute in the absence of a U.S. ICBM force. Reducing ICBM numbers would make the enemy first strike more effective, allowing large adversaries to consider a nuclear first strike and place a first strike within reach for smaller powers. Second, the U.S. nuclear arsenal without ICBMs is vulnerable to conventional attack by China and Russia. That's Matthew R. Costello writing in 2021. Without ICBMs, a U.S. nuclear force would be reduced to 5 military bases that host nuclear-capable forces, 2 submarine bases, and 3 bomber bases. Since bombers have not been on standing alert since 1991, they will be unlikely to survive an adversary's ICBM or SLBM attack. The U.S. will be left with its strategic submarines, which are usually in overhaul, 2 of which are used in overhaul at any given time, plus are docked in port an average of 35 days for maintenance, vulnerable to attack. Issues of proportionality also exist. The U.S. nuclear arsenal without ICBMs will be very vulnerable to conventional attack. U.S. subs and bombers must return to their bases to be resupplied. Russia and China in the near future have the conventional weapons to attack each of the 5 remaining bases in the U.S. The DIA notes that Russia's caliber will place all 5 remaining bases within range. China's stealth bombers, when combined with current air-launched cruise missiles, could place some U.S. bases at risk of conventional attack. A U.S.-China war would go nuclear. Even a conventional war would escalate and cause nuclear retaliation. That's Talmadge writing in 2018 at the Edmund A. Wallace School of Foreign Policy at Georgetown. China has increased installations in the South China Sea. A military confrontation no longer seems implausible. Assurance is misguided. China has nuclear weapons intermingled with conventional forces. Conventional forces can threaten nuclear forces in ways that generate pressures to escalate. In the fog of war, Beijing might conclude that limited nuclear escalation is viable. U.S. military operations would likely threaten Chinese nuclear capabilities. The U.S. would undertake an anti-submarine campaign which would threaten China's nuclear submarines. Much of this force is within range of Taiwan. Attached to base headquarters mean they would likely share transportation and supply networks, routes, and infrastructure. Missiles can carry conventional or nuclear warhead and are indistinguishable to U.S. aerial surveillance. The U.S. strategy to ensure a conventional victory would likely endanger China's nuclear arsenal. All that matters is that Chinese leaders would consider themselves threatened. Beijing might see limited nuclear escalation as a way to force an end to the conflict. It could also launch a nuclear strike with no direct military purpose to signal that the U.S. had crossed the red line. Therefore, we strongly urge a negative ballot.
Thank you for that presentation. Moving right along, providing the cross-examination for the affirmative team. Timers 1 to 3 minutes. We have Antoine Gildersleeve representing Lewiston, Maine, who is currently studying for his welder's license, and he wanted to make note that he is a convictionist. Thank you.
I like your speech, but despite that, you realize that Asian proliferation disputes are meaningless and ICBMs fly over Russia.
Is that a question? We've read evidence.
Leading into the question, so if deterrence is a strategy and our military legs only give us more capability to use from different platforms such as the sea and air, would you agree that the best nuke is the nuke you can bring anywhere?
I would agree. I would not agree with that because there are important advantages to intercontinental ballistic missiles that you can't get from mobile nukes, such as those on bombers and submarines. First of all, it's extremely difficult, impossible even, to attack ICBM silos with a conventional attack. Submarines can be disabled by a torpedo, and bombers can be taken out at their bases since they're not on 24/7 alert anymore.
Thank you. So you would sacrifice 10 million Americans instead of keeping nukes offshore or in the air?
I would rather sacrifice 10 million Americans than 300 million Americans.
And you're supposed to be the next leader of the country? So if escalating conflicts in the Middle East continue and the United States cannot effectively update our ICBMs because of supply chain issues or absence of skilled engineers.
So even if it's difficult to upgrade intercontinental ballistic missiles, which we disagree with because they're actually the least expensive leg of the nuclear triad, it is still better to have the ones that we currently operate and not dismantle one of the most important legs for a nuclear triad, which would dramatically reduce our deterrence and spook our allies in East Asia.
So if Northrop Grumman is the sole source for our updating our ICBMs, how do you think that we have enough engineers to even do that job?
A, Northrop Grumman is not the only source for ICBMs. There are many defense contractors working on the ICBM upgrade project. B, the ICBMs currently have an extended life cycle up to the 2040s, even without the GBSD upgrade, which would extend them to the 2070s. C, the US has plenty of engineering talent. As you know, I go to college. We have lots of engineers studying here.
Are you going to school to be an engineer?
Nope. I'm going to school to be an accountant.
Well, they need you on those nukes then.
I'll make sure they don't go over budget.
So do you agree that the cell phone that you keep in your pocket, well, the cell phones that we all keep, it runs, don't call back to the place. I don't got a cell phone. But you would agree that they are more powerful. The cell phone that you keep in your pocket is more powerful than the ICBM system that we have today.
That's actually a good thing. You can't hack an ICBM. Unfortunately, you can't hack a phone. And that's why ICBMs have what they need. They have the security systems. They're not accidentally launched, and they have a targeting system. We don't need complicated cyber vulnerable capabilities in our ICBMs.
So how reliable would it be better? Oh, no.
Exit. Moving right along. Presenting the negative team's first rebuttal. Timers, he has 4 to 6 minutes. Coming up to the lectern, we have Matt Stinson from Houston, majoring in Chinese and international relations. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon, folks. It's a pleasure being here. Today, I'll be refuting the affirmative case. Without further ado, I'll begin. First, top level, they say sponge theory. This is wrong and inevitable. Ask yourself what the alternative to nuclear weapons is. It's conventional systems. Think of like the firebombing of Dresden. That was far more deadly than Hiroshima. And the alternative is bombings of American cities. They say there's alternatives to ICBMs, but the alternative is conventional trident modification. This looks like replacing our nuclear weapon systems with conventional systems, which are far worse deadly and more ineffective. That's August 17. The Navy started to modify Trident nuclear ballistic missiles to hold conventional warheads and CTM. CTM sparked great interest because of its feasibility and easy availability. Committee on CPGS advised CTM, calling CTM the only option. Conventional Trident modification causes more crisis instability, produces ambiguity, and more nuclear escalation with the other legs of our triad. This is Acton, a co-director of nuclear policy program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in 2015. Word ambiguity dominates discussions about escalation risks. A state would see the launch that would quickly disappear. Risk of ambiguity should not be ignored on China or Russia. Maneuverable weapons with unpredictable trajectories create destination ambiguity, risking inadvertent escalation. Target ambiguity could be highly escalatory. The result could be rapid escalation. Secondly, they say nuclear weapons are bad for the environment. The alternative is way worse. Ask yourself what we do with the nuclear material after we dismantle these ICBMs. It increases stored plutonium and causes security failures in these storage plants. This is Broad, 23, an author and writer for the New York Times. Nuclear arms are disassembled and kept in bunkers and warehouses. A disaster waiting to happen. Accidents, safety lapses, and security failures lead to a nuclear catastrophe. It gets more dangerous as quantities increase. Plutonium cores, at least 20,000 in storage, is deadly to humans. To get rid of excess plutonium stocks, no strategy has succeeded. And you should weigh this as extinction outweighs all other possible impacts. It's the only thing we cannot reverse. Once there is a global war between the United States, Russia, and China, we cannot go back for this. Weigh this over moralistic claims about the inequities of nukes or the bad things nukes can cause. Answer to the Russia war stuff. Offense relies on Russia believing that we would use nuclear weapons. Go back to our first cross-examination where they said precisely that Russia and China do not perceive the U.S. would actually use ICBMs in a wartime scenario. Nuclear war with Russia will never happen. This is Balaskaya. It's an expert on nuclear policy and arms at the Canadian Endowment for International Peace in 2023. Nuclear weapons, Putin said, we see no need to use them. Putin elected would not use any means, leadership, or the chain of events that would lead to such an outcome is unable to provide any details. The nuclear threat from Russia is insignificant. It's unacceptable to Russian nuclear policy exports. The Russian leadership, Russia has other national interests. It shows no signs of leading the country to total destruction. It has not ever succeeded in winning over the colleagues. Russians are opposed to nuclear weapons, and U.S. nuclear posture is not the driver of adversary nuclear expression. Domestic and bureaucratic factors are more likely to encourage nuclear modernization. That's Kronig. In 2018, the enemy is building for other reasons, regardless of what the United States does. Some cultures intrinsically favor offensive doctrine. Others assert that scientists' work on security cause enhancement through dispassionate pursuit of technical breakthroughs by an arms race as the result of domestic considerations. External threats are often cited, but not central. U.S. nuclear weapons were not the primary cause of Moscow's nuclear expansion. There's also alternative causes. Think of Bolton, the INF, and START treaties all prove that Russia historically has not complied with international attempts to regulate nuclear weapons. That's Roth in 2019. Brokering deals is far more difficult. INF and failure to get in discussions about START has left us sleepwalking. The exit to INF could lead the missiles in Europe. Bolton ordered the Pentagon to deploy at the earliest possible date. Washington issued a 60-day ultimatum. Bolton spoke fervently against arms control and presided over demolition of the BMT. Bolton appears to resolve a U.S. release from bonds of nuclear arms control. They say that Americans do not support nuclear weapons. Ask yourself, who does? The Pentagon. Nuclear restraint triggers backlash from within the Pentagon, which outweighs. This is Bender in 2021. A pledge to limit the rule of nuclear weapons is facing resistance from the Pentagon and hawkish allies who are arguing to keep the status quo. China's expansion alongside Russia's modernization strengthen the hand of leaders who oppose any changes or cuts to atomic weapons. Biden will put his own stamp on nuclear strategy. Policy is a presidential level decision. Veterans see a tough road. Biden's decide withdrawal from Afghanistan despite misgivings, but in this situation, to change policy, Biden would have to overrule the Pentagon at the strategic command. And rapid and unpredictable shifts in military policy causes a civil military whiplash. It destroys effective cooperation and escalates every existential threat. This is Golby, a senior fellow at the Clements Center in 2021. A rapid shift in leadership may create a civil military whiplash. Biden will want processes that provide greater civilian direction for plans, budgeting, and priorities. A micromanagement narrative could write itself. Biden will need to establish trust while providing military officers a voice in a process that makes them feel heard. Iterative discussions are essential. Predictability can benefit the military. There will be conflict and misunderstanding, and Biden will bear the burden of demonstrating its goal is civil military cooperation. Civil military cooperation provides effective national security policies in the context of democratic accountability. They say accents, but top level, there's a huge technology thing. We assume more recent tech improves that examples of accents in the 1980s will not happen again. This is Wilderford in 22. The data went through the list of close calls where there could have been total nuclear war. Events involved computer errors and misinterpreting signaling. And they say top level money, this is 1% of the military budget, around $2 billion per year. To just equate this, we spend around the same amount of money on lobster for DoD dinners, exercise equipment, books in the library. All of this outweighs, and there's a huge shifting this data as well. We will simply just shift that money to bombers and submarines. There's no reason why limiting ICBMs would cause any significant cost trade-offs. At any risk, there's a chance we optimize through modernization, make spending more efficient. That's Rempfer in 19. Federal government spent $97 billion. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving right along, presenting the affirmative team's first rebuttal. Timers, we have 4 to 6 minutes on the clock. We have Mr. Howard Rowe, hailing from Old Orchard Beach. I believe everybody's heard of that place. He is currently studying for his associates in small business. With that said, welcome Howard to the lectern.
I would like to thank everybody for being here today while my teammates and I speak about the reasons we've chosen to affirm the resolution to decommission the United States nuclear arsenal. JFK once said that we must contemplate the day that our planet will no longer be habitable and that we must abolish these weapons before they abolish us. Our opponents are arguing to spend trillions of dollars and decades of time to upgrade the ICBMs, reasoning the need for deterrence from adversaries such as Russia, Korea, any other entity capable of attacking our U.S. government or U.S. or our interests. What our opponents fail to realize is we already have all the deterrence we need. The B-21 Raider planes are long-range, nuclear-capable stealth bombers that fuel mid-flight. The only capable Air Force on planet Earth that can fuel mid-flight, United States. They're also capable of carrying a broad mix of standoff and direct attack weapons such as nuclear weaponry and conventional payloads. They're also invisible, along with our Ohio, Virginia, and Columbia class subs that are already strategically placed around the globe and ready for action at a moment's notice. They're also invisible to any adversary, and their conventional weaponry and their nuclear payloads assure us that we will be deterring any nation seeking to harm the United States or our interests. The U.S. Gerald Ford has been equipped with the latest anti-aircraft, anti-missile weapons systems and has recently been fitted with a new direct energy weapon system. This system is a laser-guided weapon that will shoot a laser at the speed of light, capable of taking drones, anti-aircraft missiles, and other conventional weaponry right out of the sky. We have ground-based mid-course defense systems located in Alaska and California. This weapon system basic job is to take down ICBMs incoming from anywhere with a hit-to-kill projectile. Only country on planet Earth to have this system is the United States. The biggest stake in our heart to our opponent's argument is the fact that the ICBMs were not upgraded. The DoD officials note upgrades to the ICBMs would have been necessary to sustain these ICBMs until 2043. These were not taken back in 2015 when the decision was made to proceed with the ground-based strategic deterrence system instead. So any argument to not decommission the ICBMs is void of any legitimate reasons. In regard to our opponent's positions on how safe the ICBMs would, I would reference the Titan II missile launch disaster in 1963 and along with 1965 and 1983, along with the loss of a nuclear warhead in 1958 off the coast of Georgia. These silos have failed inspections, and the components of the systems are prone to glitches. They're flawed, they're corroded. These are Cold War relics. Russia recently announced that they would no longer remain compliant to the 1963 Limited Test Ban Treaty. It should be noted that the Russians assured nations around the globe that they would not make any test advancements so long as the United States did not make any advancements ourselves. So, this being said, this just shows the willingness of Russia to come to a negotiation table. If we decommission 400 of our ICBMs, imagine how much more willing Russia would be to come to a negotiation table. And like dominoes falling, more countries would come to this table. Our opponents have plenty of quotes and opinions from retired generals, political analysts, former advisors to this and to that and to this and to that. But these, at the end of the day, are opinions and are irrelevant and just as outdated as the nuclear arsenal that's currently jeopardizing the safety and security of our nation. What would you depend on more to keep your family safe and secure? I ask you this. Cold War relics are the most advanced weaponry known to mankind. Affirm the resolution to decommission the ICBMs. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Howard. Moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, we've actually reached the halfway point, so we're going to be bringing this home in a real quick second. But with that said, leading us into the opening of the second round by presenting the negative team's second constructive argument. Timer, he has 6 to 8 minutes. We have Mr. Sam Church, a freshman from Austin, Texas, majoring in government, representing Harvard University.
Good afternoon. My name is Sam, and I'm going to be explaining why our policy alternative of establishing hotlines with adversaries is a good idea and the negative downsides to abolishing ICBMs for our nuclear assurances to allies. Our counterplan is preferable because it prevents nuclear escalation from ever occurring via committing to de-escalation measures with crisis prevention measures with adversaries. That avoids the disadvantage regarding South Korean proliferation, which indicates that the elimination of ICBMs alone are bad. The first part of the 1AC about waste is irrelevant because they cannot solve it, and their counterplan prevents future escalation, which sufficiently resolves their offense. The counterplan also solves World War III with Russia by establishing a crisis hotline. That's the only empirical record for us preventing nuclear war. It enables discussion before a nuclear decision has to be made, which resolves any escalation about accidents, because before we made an accident, we would talk to Russia and make sure the threat was real. It resolves arguments about waste and testing by ensuring all negative side effects go to the sun. The 2AC does not have a deficit or reason the counterplan does not resolve all of the AF, which means if we win a risk of our reasons abolishing ICBMs are bad for South Korean assurances, you should vote negative. View the counterplan through the lens of efficiency. Even if the affirmative team begins the process of reduction, the next administration will just reverse it. Thus, if you think the AF solves, and hotlines do definitely do as well. Otherwise, vote negative on presumption because they do nothing. That's Miller, the Undersecretary of Defense for Obama, 2020. Any U.S. administration should pursue major changes in U.S. nuclear policy only if there is substantial bipartisan consensus behind such a shift. There's a likelihood of each successive administration overturning its predecessor's policy, undermining U.S. credibility. No answers to the hotlines argument means it is a preferable strategy and you should prefer it. Now, the assurances disapp. The AF causes South Korea to question U.S. commitment to their defense. That forces the U.S. to redeploy tactical nuclear weapons to the peninsula as a way to signal that they're still committed. That's escalatory and outweighs the advantages to the AF. First is magnitude. T&W redeployment causes nuclear Armageddon. That's Kaminsky, who holds a PhD in international relations from 2016. Japan will not be left out. Effects will spill over into other regions. If countries perceive the US as ceding its leadership, Saudi Arabia will withdraw and develop into a nuclear arms race. The whole system is at risk of collapsing. Eastern Europe, the SES, it's a dangerous world. 2 is time frame. Calls for TNWs will cause North Korean preemption, ensuring a war escalates before we can even solve ICBMs in the meantime. That's Panda, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment, 2023. Even if weapons are not deployed, bolts could be built. This, however, would be highly escalatory. North Korea preempts storage sites and airfields prior to arrival. Third, probability. Like Vikram said, extensive sensors on the ground and in space, as well as human controls, mean the probability of an accidental launch is the same as we find Sasquatch. That's the Caslow evidence and an expert in the field. They can't solve. Adversaries will invest in anti-sub and anti-bomber tech, which makes their impacts inevitable, but does not change adversarial perception about allies above. That's the Caslow evidence, who's also an expert in the field. Now, think about it logically. The US has been modernizing its ICBMs for years. It would be wild for the government to suddenly immediately reverse decades of investment and a waste of billions of dollars they've already seeded into ICBM technology. Do you really think Korea, a state whose very existence is being attacked by their neighbor, would go quietly into the night? There are a few specific reasons the plan destroys South Korean faith in the nuclear guarantee. First, commitments. The plan breaks the US's vow to unrestricted nuclear deterrence, demonstrating less willingness to use nukes in wartime. That shreds credibility, which is the 1&C Roush evidence. Second, it cascades. The surprise shift of the outside the normal process causes Seoul to conclude that the political winds have changed and that they've been downgraded. They'll think this portends to further shifts unless given a role in formulation. That's the Anderson evidence. Third is status. Biden literally just promised to adhere to plans for nuclear deterrence development in joint with Korea to prevent nuclear acquisition. The plan diverts, which is a Ratso, a PhD, 2023. South Korea and the US have concluded nuclear consultations. They've been expanded in April 23 when Biden announced that the two countries have agreed to establish the Nuclear Consultative Group to map out a specific plan to operate extended deterrence. The announcement followed controversial statements by South Korea that suggested the country might consider its own nuclear arsenal. So, even if Korea likes the substance of the change, they'll object to being sidelined in the process because Biden has just agreed that they would consult, and the plan averts that. That's the lead from 2019. However, from the Korean perspective, positive developments were quickly overshadowed by being sidelined. Public reacted as if it had caught the US committing adultery. Koreans fear signal their marginalization and anathema status aberrations. Developments raise alarm. Its ally was to normalize without consulting. They would regress. They sought claimed prerogative of getting to play an integral role. Koreans resorted to openly criticizing. Our case input was essential to the whole process. Consultation will convert uneasiness into support. That compounds growing doubts about US reliability, which are already common in the peninsula. That's Davenport, 2023. The US and SOCO announced steps to give Seoul more input into US nuclear planning amid growing support for a domestic nuclear program. Yoon agreed to create the Nuclear Consultative Group, states that the US will maintain robust communication for consultations. Now, they said that other states like bombers and subs will fill in. The DISAD has impact turned that. We are reading evidence about that how subs and bombers won't fill in. Instead, the US will redeploy tactical nuclear weapons because it's what South Korea will ask for. In the event the US has removed ICBMs, in exchange, the US will say the only way to reassure them and prevent them from developing their own arsenal is by redeploying tactical nuclear weapons, which are smaller, little bombs, but are still uniquely escalatory. Korea would not accept anything else. Overwhelming evidence clarifies their position. If the US drew back its nuclear deterrent, they will demand TWs as compensations. They said something about directed energy weapons. Those are science fiction. That's Galt 2023. 3 problems: tech limits, battlefield use, and ethical and health concerns. The tech is not mature, and the Pentagon is having trouble finding contractors. HEL and HPM are hard to power. The next argument they make is about missile defense in Alaska filling in. Obviously, this is not responsive to an argument about the Korean Peninsula. Missile defense in Alaska does not send the signal to Korea that we will come to their defense, so it is not responsive. The next argument is about accidents. As Matt explained in the last speech, the impact to mass miscalculation is extremely low. But this argument proves that giving TNWs to Korea would be awful for their scenarios as well, because it would increase the amount of nuclear weapons that could hypothetically go off if they're right that the existence themselves is the problem. The next argument they're going to try to make is that ICBMs are not for East Asia. 1, it is irrelevant who the aim of ICBMs are for. Our linked arguments above are about why the US not consulting South Korea about a change in its nuclear posture is bad, regardless of what the change is. It's not about the content of the affirmation, but instead the unilateral reversal that the affirmative has implicated. Second, South Korea does not want the US to remove ICBMs, even if it is their problem. 1 Chronic 18. There is the question of how a US decision to shed a leg of the triad would be interpreted. Threats and promises are believable if states back up words. Putting money where their mouths are, investing billions to modernize the ICBM force sends a clear signal of commitment to nuclear deterrence. If the US cancels plans to modernize, allies may question whether Washington remained committed to extending nuclear deterrence. The South Korean public has begun to question US security guarantees. The US can address this only by continuing to update its ICBM force readiness and ICBM modernization as part of the process. They are the backbone of deterrence. That's Kronig et al. 21. The US is at a nuclear crossroads, has to modernize its ICBMs, serve critical goals of newest strategy, deterrence, assurance, achievement objectives in Southeast Asia. Thus, we urge you to vote negative because the risk of the disadvantage is resolved by the counterplan that resolves most of the app. So there's only a risk of our offense. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And moving right along, We have a presentation from the affirmative team's second constructive argument, 6 to 8 minutes timer. We have Mr. Dylan Ketchum, who is hailing from Gardner, Maine, and he's studying for his bachelor's degree in substance abuse counselor. Please give him a warm applause.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Ketchum. We've had some fantastic points why the United States needs to abolish land-based nuclear weapons. Our enemies know the precise location of all our ICBM silos, which are located in Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, and North Dakota. The nuclear sponge would devastate those 4 states, plus Colorado, and even parts of Canada. Our enemies will launch the first strike to destroy most of these ICBMs before we can deploy them. Even small-scale use of nuclear warheads would deplete the ozone layer, significantly adding to our nation's forest fire problem and hasten the effects of global warming. The nuke we dropped on Hiroshima created a 4-mile radius of winds equal to those in a Category 5 hurricane, immediately flattening buildings, knocking down power lines, and triggering gas leaks. Now multiply those effects by 80, which is how much more powerful our current nukes are. Again, multiply this catastrophe by 400, the number of all our ICBMs, and what you're left with is a 128,000 square miles of toxic wasteland, larger than New Mexico, that will take years to be even partially livable again. The nuclear sponge will kill about 10 million people. 300 million will be exposed to nuclear fallout, causing their DNA to be potentially altered and possibly causing various cancers. The radioactive fallout could forever alter the DNA of plants and animals within the nuclear sponge. The Midwest is one of the highest crop producing regions in the United States. This will fatally starve a large percentage of the country. The nuclear sponge will cause one of the worst food shortages in U.S. history, and it would take years for us to fully recover. Nowadays, we have more countries to worry about than just Russia. Since ICBMs need to travel through Russian airspace in order to hit any other enemy nation, then it's pointless to keep them. We have serious threats in the Middle East and Asia. Even though most Americans believe in abolishing our land-based nuclear weapons, the ICBM lobbyists, nuclear weapons contractors, and their allies in Congress know that there's hundreds of billions of dollars to be made in developing and building, and trillions in maintaining the new ICBMs over 3 decades. Time magazine interviewed Tom Kalina, Director of Policy at the Plowshare Fund, San Francisco nonprofit organization that supports nuclear nonproliferation. He said, quote, "We should not be trying to lure a nuclear attack against U.S. territory. ICBMs serve no useful purpose, are a waste of money, and we would be safer without them. It'd be better to take that $100 billion and burn it in a barrel," unquote. Physicist Lisbon Gronlund, co-author and former corrector of the UCS Global Security Program, told the Union of Concerned Scientists that, quote, "A mistaken nuclear launch is a very real possibility. In fact, there have been a number of close calls over the last 50 years where human or technological errors led to both the United States and Russia to begin preparations to launch their nuclear weapons," unquote. William J. Perry, Defense Secretary from 1994 to 1997, agrees that the United States could eliminate their ICBM fleet and still have a robust nuclear arsenal. Quote, "Retiring the ICBMs would save considerable costs, but it isn't only budgets that would benefit," unquote. He wrote in a New York Times column, "These missiles are some of the most dangerous weapons in the world. They could even trigger an accidental nuclear war." Perry then described a false alarm that he experienced in 1979 when a computer glitch falsely indicated that there were 200 Soviet nuclear missiles headed towards the United States. If we modernize or replace our ICBMs, then we further violate the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which is a landmark international treaty whose objective is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology, to promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and to further the goal of achieving nuclear disarmament. If we want more allies and less enemies, then we need to follow through with our agreements. We'll also be leading by example, which will show other countries that we're headed towards peace, not war. This will also help rebuild our relationships with Russia and other near-peer adversaries. The silos are falling apart like the burnt husk of an incinerated house. Time magazine interviewed Air Force Captain Moffett of the Alpha 1 Missile Alert Facility in eastern Wyoming. He said most of the equipment is broken or damaged and marked with a paper tag that reads warning or danger. The entire command capsule is negligently on top of steel stilts because the shock absorber system, which was installed in 1963 to survive a thermonuclear blast, is now inoperative. So there's a tag for Air Force maintenance teams to fix that too. Then there are malfunctions that aren't marked. On the computer monitor that allows a captain to keep an eye on a fleet of 10 ICBMs, there's a flashing glitch on the bottom of the screen. The classified phone line has such a weak connection that they can barely hear fellow Air Force officers who are commanding more than 100 other nuclear missiles spread across 9,600 square miles, which is bigger than Vermont. The entire ICBM fleet runs on less computational power than what's now found inside the smartphone in your pocket. When something breaks, the Air Force maintenance crews pulls parts from warehouse shelves, pays contractors to make them to specifications, which now cost $55,000 an hour, or even occasionally scavenge them from military museums. If the order ever came through to fire the missiles, the directive, which only our president can give, would come in the form of what's called an emergency action message. The order would appear on a captain's sometimes glitching trichromatic monitor via a computer program that still relies on floppy disks, a technology which just about died out in the 90s that looks alien to young airmen. Terminal countdown sequence would begin after a machine translated the digital signal from a command hub into an analog signal that the 50-year-old receiver inside a missile silo could recognize. Way too many facets could go wrong in the event of actual ICBM defense. The other two legs of the nuclear triad are more superior. SLBMs, such as the Trident II, are more accurate than ICBMs. Hans Christensen, a nuclear weapons expert at the Federation of American Scientists, told Forbes magazine that the Trident II has a much better flight track record than Minuteman III. Quote, in fact, it appears to be the most reliable long-range ballistic missile ever, unquote. The B-61 air-launched nuclear bomb is also more efficient than ICBMs. Former U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff General Norton Schwartz said at a conference in 2010 that a B-61 has greater accuracy, lower yield, better damage to an underground target, and less radioactive fallout than ICBMs. The past shows that the chances are higher of us accidentally detonating our ICBMs than us going to war with Russia. There's never a reason 10 million Americans need to die and hundreds of millions need to struggle to find food when this can be easily prevented. Our ICBMs are completely useless right now. They were useful over 30 years ago, but now they need to humbly step aside for better technology like our Ohio-class submarines and superior aircrafts. We're going to spend $2 trillion, and let's make it advantageous. We thank our historic ICBMs for their service. Now it's time to say goodbye. Before Carl Sagan died, he warned the world that the nuclear arms race is like two sworn enemies standing waist-deep in gasoline, one with 3 matches, the other with 5.
Thank you so much for that, Dylan. And moving right along, presenting the affirmative team's second rebuttal, timers, 3 to 5 minute presentation. We have Officer Bill Bruns from Bangor, Maine, who studied and has a bachelor's degree in clinical labor science and a master's degree in counterterrorism and intelligence. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you to our visitors, our honored judges, and our esteemed opponents. I've heard a lot of interesting theories that you have. I'd like to tell you where I get my knowledge from. I've spent the last 12 years every day looking at the Office of Naval Intelligence, Army Intelligence, and Air Force Intelligence websites. The reason I do this, I'm paranoid. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea all have the same issue. They don't care about their people. They care about power and the money that they're going to make. If we set up a hotline that's been set up since the 70s, I might add, it's highly unlikely they're going to come to us with anything other than this is what I want or we're going to blow you up. That is their personal nuclear doctrine. They are first strike. We are not. We retaliate. We will never be, again, the first strike. We will always retaliate once they're firing upon us. It is highly unlikely they're going to negotiate, period, no matter what we offer them. But if we come to the table with the thought of maybe reducing, and we can keep pushing that, they might do the same thing. Quoting a number of non-government, non-military think tanks of people who have never worked or had to negotiate such things doesn't give you credibility, no matter how many PhDs or where you go to college. It's exceedingly important to have some sort of military background, to actually have fought, to have defended our country, and to understand what that means. If there was a nuclear strike against us, we would come at them with all thunder and glory that Americans have. That is our policy. For instance, our adversaries can't reach us. They lack something so important as to be able to proliferate using our capabilities with air refueling. A good example of this, there was an inappropriate usage of an ICBM that almost hit Japan from Pyongyang. On top of that, they've been building their own nuclear weapons that have had a number of malfunctions. Our response to this had nothing to do with ICBMs. We launched 2 B-2 bombers out of Whiteman Air Force Base using air refueling. We flew all the way to North Korea into their airspace, dropped down to the DMZ, and flipped our bellies to them. They didn't know we were there till we were at 100 feet when we were essentially flipping them off. We flew back, not a shot was fired. They stopped for about 4 years. That was the last time that they had done a nuclear test. The assumption that was stated that there would be a reduction going back between 2 regimes, that if we reduced, that the other one, highly unlikely. It'd be exceedingly expensive to do such a thing. As for science fiction with laser-based weapons, I will tell you Russia and China has been using those for years, attacking satellites, attacking our planes, attacking our drones. That is something happening right now. Fun fact, the United States has even done it in Iraq and Syria against drones, missile strikes, and their aircraft. The important thing to understand that is being missed in this entire conversation, we have the best Air Force in the world. The second best Air Force in the world is the US Navy. Our submarines are undetectable by anything that our adversaries have. They have nothing to find us. And if there is an escalation in fighting between any of our adversaries and us, we scuttle the fleet. You can bomb our bases all you want, we won't be there. I've watched it happen myself. If it gets to the point where there's a possibility of a nuclear strike, our bombers are not going to be anywhere where you think they're going to be. They're going to be in the Pacific. They're going to be scattered amongst the United States. They're going to be in Europe. Our submarines, they're going to go to water. They'll never see them until it's already flying at them. As far as the Air Force is concerned, we actually have stealth bombers. It was mentioned that China does. They do not. They have a cheap ripoff of the F-22 and F-35. They build our toys. Of course, they're going to look like them. They can't fight like them. Their bombers, they can't reach the United States. They don't have air refueling. They try to steal our stuff. They can't. They can't even launch off an aircraft carrier and recover. They're going to die if they do it. Our bombers can launch from 400 nautical miles away. They have nothing that can reach out and even tell us to go away. Don't even get started with our F-22s and F-35s. They are terrifying. Iran was flying into Iraq. 2 F-22s were doing figure eights around them before they even were seen. They flew away really fast, terrified. Thank you.
So, without further ado, presenting the negative team's second rebuttal for speech presentation of 3 to 5 minutes, we have Rishi representing Harvard University. Thank you.
Okay, before I speak, I would like to do thank yous because I believe in thank yous. Okay, so first person I'd like to thank is Tripp, the director of debate at Harvard. I go to UMass Amherst, and Tripp has made debate possible for people from other schools. We have a kid at Northeastern here, a Tufts kid over here, and Sam is our Harvard rep. And it would have been impossible for me to get access to this, and especially since the things we were talking about at the beginning about opportunity are so important. I want to thank him for that. Also, on a personal level, he's been really great to me. Over the summer, I didn't have a place to sleep or any family, so he gave me a place to stay. So I really appreciated that. So thank you, Trev. Thank you to our opponents and everyone who made this possible. The Daniel with insane energy. I love his energy. The two-time champ over here. And thank you to all my partners who are debating with me. Okay. I have 5 minutes, right? 3-5. Okay. Okay. Cool. The most important issue in this debate is not spending money or costs or accidents. It's whether or not we will live to see another day. Nuclear war is the most scary thing possible, and we should avoid it at all costs. No matter how persuasive their speeches are going to be, I want you all to remember that idea, because extinction is the scariest thing that we should avoid no matter what. I think it's very telling that our disadvantage about South Korea isn't really addressed on point. Their arguments are very persuasive about how other things like bombers or ICBMs are inadequate or other things will be sufficient, but they haven't talked about how other people will react to the United States abolishing the plan. As one of the few Asians in the room, it's very telling that other Asian countries will feel that the United States is abandoning them. This is a claim that we've made the entire debate that has not been adequately responded to. Sam made a very clear argument about South Korean consultation. He read very qualified evidence from Harvey, who says that the United States just agreed to consult South Korea on all nuclear policy changes. They have a nuclear policy consulting group, and the United States has committed to do that in 2023. Their advocacy is the United States totally turning its back on our allies. So even if you think that, Mount Rushmore and the American monuments we hold so dear are important, think about what a nuclear war will look like in East Asia. They have ignored that in a world where South Korea develops its own nuclear bomb, or we redeploy tactical nuclear weapons to the Asian peninsula, that will result in all of the arms racing that they say is very scary. If we all are really up in gasoline, we do not want to be in gasoline in America and in Asia and all over the world. The thing we want to avoid is an actual nuclear war, and we should stop that by making sure that we care for our allies as well. Now, on the counter advocacy, the thing I want to emphasize is that the status quo is working now, so we do not need to win our counter advocacy, but it's very important what Bill Brunn just said. He said, our adversaries will say, this is what I want, or we are going to blow you up. Do you really think that their arms control treaty is going to work if this is how our adversaries are going to react? Obviously not. It's incoherent to go to say both these things at the same time. It's a clear and obvious contradiction. Remember Matt's speech. He gave an example of the INF and New START, which are treaties that failed with Russia. Our opponents have never answered these examples, which is a demonstration for even if the goodwill of ICBMs were to be something that we implement, it would never actually result in any reduction of material risk. What does work in the status quo now is the fact that extended deterrence has stopped all wars from happening, and there's never been a nuclear war. That is something you know, and the fact that they keep on saying ICBMs are useless, we're never using them. That's the whole point. We're not using nuclear weapons because deterrence is working. If you carry a big stick and you never hit the other person with it, that's the whole point, because no one wants to get into wars, and we never want to use weapons. This is far more important than their arguments about accidents. The reason nuclear war has never accidentally happened is because deterrence is working. All of their examples of close calls are from the 1980s. Matt read evidence that's recent from 2022 that says technology is safe now. A data scientist analyzed all accidents in recent history and showed that the risk of those accidents are going down. Our opponents want to turn back the time and go back to a world which is far, far more risky. All of those things are far less safe. And remember, risking East Asian arms racing in a nuclear war in Asia is far worse. Now, an independent argument that I did not hear a direct response to was our argument about the military backlash. They have presented an argument that is pretty infeasible in the real world. If Biden tries to actually abolish nuclear weapons, we've proven that the military will revolt. It will cause civil-military relations to collapse. This means that the military will be unable to sustain itself, which causes all of the problems that they've said are bad. War will be inevitable. It will happen much faster than all of the issues that they said, and that's something that they can't solve. Another issue is they've never answered our argument about sponge theory. They've said that, yes, the bombers are capable, and obviously the subs are capable or whatever, but 5 bases is not as safe as 500 targets. And I want everyone to remember that before they stand up and argue all those things. The last thing is there is no way to dispose of all of the waste that's produced from ICBMs, which we can clearly do, which means that the status quo is safer than their advocacy.
Okay. Thank you for that, Vichy. So now this actually comes to the last part of our speaking engagement here. We're going to bring in both teams for closing arguments. The timer, we'll have 90 seconds for these arguments. And first up is representing the affirmative team, Mr. Antoine Gildersleeve. 90 seconds for your closing. Thank you.
All right. We've learned a lot tonight. We've heard a lot tonight about our country's ICBMs. Both sides have acknowledged the importance of keeping our national security and the desire to keep our country safe. My team is not advocating for less protection. We're advocating for better protection, smarter protection. Highlighting the facts that the mere existence of these weapons increases the threat of an extinction level event. To upgrade would just merely create a shinier, more expensive version of this limited leg. Updating doesn't mean fixing our issues to our ICBMs. It only makes it a more expensive, outdated system. Reducing ICBMs to fund our most capable air and sub launch is our biggest deterrence. The false sense of protection from these ICBMs has only escalated the number of arms in our world, continue to strain our relationships with Russia, and cause unease with every single adversary in the world. Ronald Reagan said it best. I have hope way in the back of my head that if we start down the road to reducing, maybe one day in doing that, somebody will say, why not all the way? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that closing, Antoine. Moving right along, representing the team from Harvard, giving their closing timer, 90 seconds. We have Vikram Bellamy. Welcome to
Since 1945, none of the world's 44 largest economies have gone into full-scale war. The United States, during that time, has consistently and repeatedly articulated its nuclear policy of peace through strength. Look, an hour ago, I said I'd prefer 10 million Americans dead to 300 million Americans dead. And I do. But the real choice in this debate is between the 0 Americans that are dying now in a nuclear war and the many millions of people both in East Asia and in all likelihood in the United States that would die if the United States abandoned its defensive commitments. Look, even if you agree with every single argument they have made in this debate, they have presented no evidence as to how our allies in East Asia would react to a reduction in the US nuclear deterrent. We have read specific evidence that cites politicians and leaders in South Korea that says if the US took out its ICBMs, they would see it as a betrayal. They would see it as betrayal of the commitments President Biden made in April of 2023, less than a year ago, and they would demand compensation. That compensation would look like the deployment of even more dangerous nuclear weapons to the Korean Peninsula. And that would dramatically increase the risks of war. When you consider your decision in this debate, look at their arguments. All of them go to the US is credible, the US has lots of deterrent, and none of them speak to the perception of the US nuclear arsenal. So in all likelihood, what will happen is South Korea gets tactical nuclear weapons that leads to an arms race in the region, North Korea preemptively strikes, and the horror scenario that none of us
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of our speaking portion of today's event. With that said, we're actually going to call up our director, Danny. He's going to come up here and he's going to do a few things while we give our judges the time to tally the scores and we can see who wins. But before we bring Danny up, let's first give a round of applause for our team from Harvard. Yeah. And just for everybody's awareness here, you see the table's full over here, right? We have a full portion of speakers. Harvard still came down one, right? So I definitely want to obviously give them that recognition. A couple of these guys played multiple roles, which is really hard in the debate world. So definitely kudos to you guys and a big up for that. Thank you very much. And certainly, we definitely have to give a very big round of applause to our home team from Maine State Prison, the Convictionists. With that said, our director, Mr. Daniel Troop.
I got lots of bling. You guys are clapping for the bling, I'm sure. It's great to see everybody. I hope everyone really appreciates what you just witnessed because it was spectacular. Thank you, Harvard. Thank you, the Convictionists from Maine State Prison. Thank you, Maine DOC, and thank you all at home. I know a lot of people are tuning in virtually all around this country, and I hope you can appreciate the high level of intellectual exchange that you guys just saw. The debate's over. We're going to have a little fun while the judges tally the scores, as your moderator said. This is a very, very strong group of debaters on both sides. And Maine State Prison, since our launch at NPDL, they've been racking up hardware. So we actually delivered it today. So I'm here to start the awards while we wait on the judges' scores. We're already got trophies before today's is even given out. That's how the NPDL is doing business now, right? So I'd like to recognize Maine State Prison because last April, they beat the national champs from Wake Forest University. So Sean Libby was a member of that team. Come on up, Sean. You are undefeated. Undefeated. 2 times. Congratulations, sir.
Oh, man. Thank you.
I don't know if he's undefeated. I think DJ Reed might have.
I mean, we got when we get to the inter prison divisions, we'll see how it all shakes out. But Sean did great. And I want to say that this award, Sean, we actually launched officially this MIT co-ed debate that we did, the MSP and it was actually, this was the MSP Wake debate, but I actually have that trophy as well because that was a launch at NCHEP that Sean was also a part of. These are Sean's 2 wins.
2-time undefeated.
Now, obviously not all of his teammates are here to accept this, but you are.
I am.
And we want to congratulate the rest of your teammates. You guys did such an amazing job.
This is the only reason I came.
Well, you told everyone you were 2-0. You got 2 trophies to prove it.
Prove it. And Clarence,
Thank you, Sean.
if it was a 5th, we'd all be drunk. All right? What are we doing? Take it. I don't care.
Also, I'd also like to acknowledge the 2 amazing coaches that are here today. We have an amazing volunteer network at the NPDL. We're very blessed. And I'd like to first acknowledge Adam Lee from Boston College. Adam is an amazing man. I'm going to ask you to say a few words, if you don't mind, and maybe share with the folks at home what this coaching experience has been. Adam is also a Maine State rep. Come on up, Adam. Come on up.
In that second capacity, I got to leave for the state of the state soon. But I've told people this several times. I've been coaching high school and college debate for about 20 years. There are no better students than the ones that I coach at MSP. And that's because they're hungry, they care. You tell them something one week, the very next week you see those changes implemented. And they're, I'm not just proud of them because they're folks who are incarcerated and doing this. I'm proud of them because they're just an amazing component of Maine. They make me proud to be a Mainer. They made me proud to work with this group. It made me proud to work at the NPDL. Love you guys.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. And it's a well-coached bunch that you obviously saw in action today. And Adam's worked very hard. The team has worked very hard. As you can tell from today's presentation, this is not easy stuff. Policy debate on nuclear topics. It's a lot, as you can see. And the other coach I'd like to acknowledge, and actually Tripp, you are like, again, Tripp in Harvard worked with us last year. Tripp is an amazing guy. Tripp Rebrovic. I'd first of all like to give you an award as well. So I'm not Oprah, but we're giving out awards today. All right. So come on up. This is what you won. All right. I want to say, I acknowledge, I got to say, I don't like acknowledging our teams catching L's, but it happens because we're human. And I got to tell you, your team was the first team to beat one of our NPDL teams officially. It was a virtual debate. And then BC actually set the record last week by beating us in person. I don't want to take any more L's if the judges are listening, but I mean, it isn't the WWE. You got to kill your own meat here at the NPDL. But here's your trophy for winning that debate. Well fought. Would you like to say a few words about the experience, sir?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you to everybody who's here watching and our opponents. This is such a great experience for our students and debaters, and you know, we know the joys of debate and how it motivates you and the joys of competition. And we're so happy to be able to share that with anybody around the world and to see the amazing work and the amazing speeches that both sides gave. And, you know, our opponents, we're just so thrilled. And, you know, it's worth every minute that we spend coming up here from Boston, and we look forward to the next match, you know, regardless of what happens this time. So we'll see. If we lose, then we'll want a rematch. But yeah, no, we're so happy to be here, and you know, hope we can do more. And I'm thrilled to just see the growth of the NPDL, and Harvard Debate will continue to be a major supporter. And so keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tripp. And are the judges still tallying? Okay, so until we get final scores in, we have more awards. We came loaded today. All right, so I'd like to introduce NPDL's Director of Community Engagement, a close personal friend of mine, Mr. Clarence Williams, to come up and hand out another amazing award today. Clarence, come on up, sir.
Just for the record, when we first started this, we got paper. I feel some kind of way about this, especially this guy gets to run around here talking about, you know, undefeated 2 times. You know what it is, right? We might have to get the best of both worlds to get in there. We're gonna call to get the band back together and come in and do some business. But with that, right, I want to say I'm proud of all you guys. I got an opportunity to walk around and ask you about you guys, right? I didn't come ask about your crimes. I didn't want to know none of that. I wanted to know who you were and what your future looks like. As you can see, most of us here, you see what our future looks like because we put the time in, right? That's why I asked you those questions. It wasn't a job interview. It was me actually getting to know who you are as the VP of Public Engagement, right? As much as I don't want to give this, I want to take it home. This guy right here, I love his attitude. I love how he brings the National Prison Debate League on the floor. He actually sells it for us as well. I know how important it is to be on the inside and trying to get guys to actually believe in the vision, right? I don't think Jay Reed's gonna like this either. But with this, I want to give the Malcolm X Debater Award. He's the Malcolm X Debater of the Year, stands firm. If you trade me one of those, I'll give Sean Liberty this. This is for you, brother. Thank you, big brother. Congratulations. Thank you. How you doing? Yeah. You want me to hold these for you while you take a picture?
I want to keep moving while I take a picture. I know, right?
Like Adele. Yeah, fix my hair, would you?
Oh, man.
Sean, you want to say anything?
I just,
Undefeated.
yeah, I do. Of course I do. Undefeated, 2-time. No, I just really like. I just want to, like, I said it earlier, I want to thank everybody for what, for making this what it is and what it can be. And what it can be is way bigger than what it is right now. I appreciate the opportunities that Daniel's given to me. And the commissioner, everybody at the DOC, and all of my teammates in the past. These aren't just me. It's everybody knows up here. It's a team thing. We all came to, you see everybody while they're going, they're working together as a team. While they're going, they're working together as a team. It's a team thing. We're in this together. We're doing it together. And I just appreciate everybody. Thank you. Brandon Brown, my boy.
Hey, Daniel, we do have a decision.
Thank you,
If
Sean. I know I just handed you a whole bunch of shiny contraband. I'll let you and the authorities sort that out. No, but you earned that, and your teammates, like you just well said, sir.
I'll search out Thursday when I come back.
Okay, all right. Before we have scores, Brittany? Okay, before we get to the judges, which we're going to hear from in a moment, we have one more award to present before today's award. So this is also a very important one. So we're going to take a moment. I want to introduce you to another very integral member of the NPDL team. He is actually, full disclosure, he is applying. He just completed a master's degree from Harvard University, and we're lucky to have him on our team. And he's applying now for a PhD program at Harvard. So it's all love here. Harvard, BC, MSP, MCC, WC. We're all in the house, and we're all showing the world how you can create new forms of community. And someone that I really have a lot of respect for is going to present this award to someone else we all have a lot of respect for. I think a lot of people in this room will certainly applaud this. George Vicente, come on up, sir.
Thank you, Truth. Before I get off this award, I just want to say this was great seeing this event take place. My first debate that I was in Norfolk State Prison. I was incarcerated when I was 17 years old, did 18 years in prison, and my first debate was against BC. And I know what you guys are feeling. I know you guys came very prepared, so you won't be ashamed while you're up there. But you don't have anything to be ashamed about. You came through and you did what you did. You put up good work. All you guys just did an amazing job. And I love this, man, because it shows that you're human. It humanizes you, and that's what we need. Being in prison, being incarcerated, surrounded by walls, you're wearing certain colors, you're in your cell, and you're in that environment 24/7, and so it can have a dehumanizing effect on all of us. And we're humans, and that's what I want, for all of us to see. No matter what, we make our mistakes, but we pick ourselves back up, we keep on moving forward, and we all deserve dignity and respect. And this is just a push, towards that. So much props to everyone involved in making stuff like this happen. And so this award goes to somebody who's very supportive of that mission and of making that happen. And I met him today, and I can see in his eyes and see through his talk and see his spirit that he is very indeed supportive of everything that we do. And he has a heart, for this. And you guys know him better than I do, so I know you guys will agree. So this award for distinguished service is going to Philip Patoka.
Bill, he's getting on his first defeat.
And the pants are extra swaggy. I'm feeling the pants, bro. They swaggy.
I don't really know what to say. This past August marked 5 years that I've been honored to work with the Department of Corrections here in the state of Maine. I'm not a Mainer originally. I'm from Connecticut, though I am the son of a corrections officer. Growing up, he came from a different time and a different era, but he had similar frustrations of seeing the same faces over and over and over again. And I had one very influential story that I like to parrot around the facilities, the new officers and residents alike. But when I was a kid, we were on vacation down in Florida, and man approached our, we were going to go-karting, I think it was, and I heard, "Hey, LT." I never saw my father scared, concerned, anything like that. He went ghost white. I said, "Hey, Donna, why don't you just bring the kids inside? I'll be in a minute." And afterwards, I asked him, I was like, "Hey, who's that guy?" He was like, "Oh, he's from Bridgeport Correctional." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Like, you know, a captain that we used to visit or some of his retired friends." He was like, "No, other side of the door." I was 10, 12 years old at the time. I'm like, "Oh, crap. Well, what did he want?" He goes, "He just wanted to say hi. Never thought he'd see me again. Wanted to say thank you." I'm like, "Oh, did you save him? Did you do something special?" Like, I have no idea. He was like, "No." He goes, "Just got out, moved down here, got a job, living with his brother, all that. Never thought he'd see me again, but was surprised. And he just wanted to say thanks for treating him like a human being." I never, ever thought that I would work for the Department of Corrections. I used to joke with him all the time because corrections was not his first choice. That, "Hey, listen, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but no, I want to be a teacher." And I think about it, I swear on his name every day when I drive up the driveway to the prison. From the first days of working with Brandon Brown, who helped to keep the door open for future graduate students like Sean and others, I was fortunate enough to be on the receiving end of Commissioner Liberty's ideas of creating more progressive, humanizing corrections. And I mean, every team that I've been a part of has been more and more inclusive, more open, more boundary breaking. And I say this with full conviction, no pun intended, because I really did not plan for this. I'm not one for public speaking, which is ironic considering my chosen profession. But this is probably one of the high points of my career. Not this, although this is much appreciated, and I appreciate the work that you guys do, and I'll happily continue to be supportive of it. But for these guys, for Officer Bruns, for anybody and everybody that had a hand in that, us being here today, I said, "Hey, this is the third team. It's not going to be the last team. The next one that we're putting together will be the fourth team, but it sure won't be the last team." And I look forward to more and more of these moments to see what I see every single day, what these guys are capable of. I was told this time around, cast a wide net, include some staff, and even Officer Bruns, when I approached him, he goes, "Oh, you know what I do, right? Outside of here." He goes, I deal with nukes and just this topic." I was like, "No, that's how I asked you, but that's an added bonus." It's just honestly the fact that we're all here together for the same reason, teamwork. Gentlemen, thank you for being a part of this. You may not really sink in just how consequential this is, but as time goes on, you realize that you guys help to be part of something special, as is everybody else in this room. If I continue talking, I'm going to continue to ramble. And so I'm just going to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart to each and every one of you for allowing me to be a part of this. Not just administration and the staff, but you guys. Thank you for attending classes. Thank you for putting in the effort. It means the world to me because I don't have a job if it's not for you guys. You know, I was brought in to work with Brandon and I've seen him full circle. And I couldn't be proud of each and every one of you. So thank you. Thank you all. And I look forward to seeing you all again next time.
All right, thank you. So obviously, definitely appreciation for everybody that's here, everybody that showed support. He just brought this up. Like, there's a lot of humanity in this room. So at the end of the day, give you guys yourselves a round of applause for that. Like, it's really a big thing here. And lastly, I know we got to get out of here, but I would be remiss if I didn't single out Officer Bruns because, like, in my world, he literally has the courage that most people don't have. So I have to acknowledge that and validate that. And thank you for bridging the gap, bro, and being a part of the process. So appreciate you. So I believe that we are ready, judges, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have our head judge, Miss Danielle O'Gorman. She's going to announce who the winner is. So the floor is yours, Danielle.
Hey, everybody. I just want to first reiterate, they have given me the floor, and so now I will slightly ramble, but I just want to reiterate how meaningful this process has been. This is my second time judging, and then I also coached the ADA team that debated some of your alums. So Brittany and Daniel and a few other folks who I'm recognizing tonight. We're all on that team as well. And this has been such a meaningful process, and I've really enjoyed every single time I've gotten to do it. And I hope Professor Katsoulis asked me to do it a lot more because I really enjoy it. This was a tough topic. The evidence on this question, I think, is difficult even for experts to grapple with. So I was incredibly impressed with both teams and how they handled working through a very complex issue. That said, the decision was a 3-0 for the negative team from Harvard. So congratulations to both teams. Should I do you want me to discuss the debate or no? Okay. Well, on that note,
From Harvard.
Thank you. You want to say something?
Okay, well, thank you all for joining at home virtually. That's going to conclude today's debate. We're back in action February 6th with our women's team, Opinionated Minds, against Suffolk University. Stay tuned and check out npdl.org for the free live stream links. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.